As I sit here in the garden, which honestly I don't do very often, because every time I come outside I think, oh, I've got to do something. So I don't spend a lot of time just relaxing in it, but when I'm working in it, or even right now looking at it, the garden is such an expression of, it's such an intimate expression of who I am and what appeals to me and my artistic eye. Hello, I'm Christie Dustman. I live in the Boston area, and I'm happy to be able to show you my garden. It was featured in the magazine in 2021. That was right during COVID, so I was probably 20 feet away from the photographer at the time. So we've had another 4 years for the garden to go through some changes and ins and outs of new plants and ideas. So I'd like to start here on the side garden. It's really part of the front yard. Because there's various paths in it, it appears much bigger than it really is. And the visitor to the garden has the experience of seeing different vignettes kind of change as you move through the paths. So as you look down this path, you'll see that the walkway here is styled on a Japanese theme in terms of using the stone kind of as a crackle is how it would be referred to. And then the lines that you see leading you to kind of a mysterious doorway, what's beyond there. And that is one of the hallmarks of a Japanese garden. The little special things, or the plants, or how I've even pruned plants, or how I've combined plants and sculptures and stone. I'm really, every minute, every second, I'm thinking about it through a design lens that guides how I place things. And then also I have a sense of humor. So like I have an electric typewriter, I have an old-fashioned telephone that, you know, I say to kids when they come to the garden, you know, find the phone, find the rabbit, find this and that. And some kids don't even recognize that that is a phone because it's the old-fashioned, you know, pick-up phone. So I like tucking in things that no one would expect in a garden, as well as I really appreciate the artistic quality of like old tools, old gears, you know, when things were really made in a very solid way. They just feel like they have so much majesty in some ways to these older materials. So I have a lot of farm implements, gears, car parts, just all kinds of crazy things in the garden. And it's less about what its use was, and it's more about appreciating it as a piece of sculpture. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about all the time, is that the plants, the objects, the stone, they're all sculptures, and I'm thinking they're all shapes. And so I'm thinking about how to combine them in a way that feels balanced and feels energized. So it is true that basically every inch of the garden I have had a hand in exactly how it looks. So for me, mystery really is important, and I hadn't thought about exactly that word. But when I go to plant plants, I'll often you know, violate the taboo of you got to put the short thing, then the medium thing, then the tall thing. I like to put, you know, a tall thing in the front So you have the experience of, what's behind it, and it creates an unexpected vignette as opposed to more traditional design that adheres to, these are the different layers, these are the different heights, the background should be evergreens, the perennials are in the front. So I guess I like to push that envelope, and I think that's one of the reasons why the garden feels more dynamic. This is one of the areas that I guess could exemplify how I put things together. So really the structure is there's 3 big boulders. This boulder has a couple of supporting boulders. And then in the center of the trio, I have kind of a roundy moundy dwarf Japanese white pine. And the way that I've pruned that over the time is to try to have some texture as opposed to it just being a round ball. And then on the ground plane, this is actually a type of Chamaecyparis called Chiriman. And it has these very odd angular fingers that are coming out. So you have that in contrast with kind of the roundy moundy. And then I've just finished the fall pruning on this red pine, Pinus densiflora, and you see that I'm really accentuating kind of the layering, the tiered layering of the branches. And I do a Japanese technique where you actually pluck off the second year needles. So that's why it's looking quite open. And then just kind of out of nowhere comes this these absolutely amazing Japanese jack-in-the-pulpits. And they don't actually come up until July. So then in July, you start seeing these guys come up. And, in some ways, this is a similar kind of a shape to this, but it brings in a light color. Then I have the anchor, which everyone needs an anchor, and just kind of the different levels. This was the hardest design that I ever did, was for myself. And that was because, when you put, in the olden days, you put, pen to paper, you're making some final or permanent decisions about what is that you're going to have and what you're not going to have. And so that was really felt difficult because I felt like I had a lot of different ideas, but I have a limited amount of space and I want everything to flow. So when I'm designing professionally, I'm thinking about how are the homeowners going to interact with the outdoors. And I think for me, it was more about how can I create different views and set up different vignettes that then I can almost decorate or curate. Because for me, like I said before, I mean, maybe when I retire, I'll actually spend time enjoying being in the garden. But for me, really being in the garden means that I'm active in the garden. So it's less important that I have, the perfect place with the perfect table for enough to seat 8 people and close to the grill and this, that, and the other thing. So, but still professionally, I want to think about how, when you come outside, how are you going to interact with your space, and how can it be something that is very dynamic rather than, you open the door, you see everything, you go back inside, because it's kind of one and done. So it's more important to me that you look outside and there's different places and different things, so it feels inviting and it feels like you want to go out to kind of explore what the things are. Anyone that knows me knows that I have kind of an obsession with conifers, and I think that's because they have a certain permanence being an evergreen as opposed to something that, comes up, dies, that's more seasonal or annual. And when I think about plants and I think about conifers, I'm really thinking about them as shapes. And so then I'm thinking about what shapes go together in a way that there's enough texture and color and tension between them but that they still look like they're friends with each other. So there's a little bit of a tension sometimes, but I really like to try to exploit that. And for me, I also think of myself as a sculptor because I do so much garden pruning. And I use some Japanese techniques for the conifers. And so for me, as I'm looking at plants, I'm thinking about, what do I want to take away? What do I want to leave? And something that I try to teach is that a plant is more interesting when there's actually some air space in it. So in some ways, it's like, how do you add airspace or voids to the plant so that you get to see more of the characteristic of it. And I really appreciate the structure often that is part of like Japanese maples, some conifers. So one of the things that I really appreciate about conifers, evergreens, is that, given the right plant in the right spot, the plant really does bring a gravitas, a majesty, just a real groundedness to part of the garden. And so, I have farm roots, and I think I just really appreciate some historical components to the different pieces of metal that I've picked up, as well as I think people would say that the garden does feel grounded, and that's important to me because you'll see that there's many layers to the garden. So it's not like you come in and you can just see everything. You really have to explore and move around through the different layers to see all of the different vignettes from different points of view. When I think about putting plants together, I try to have different textures. So if something's very fluffy, I might use a conifer that is more solid and grounded with the thing that's fluffy. And then maybe there's something that is a mid texture. So you have the grounded, fluffy, kind of mid texture, and then maybe something that's creepy. I guess that's kind of the recipe for how I would think about putting plants together. At this point with the garden, I'm more selectively taking something out, putting something in. The top criteria is not color. The top criteria first is the shape and the texture. I do shy away from incredibly garish yellows, so you won't really see that in the garden, but color is not the very first thing that I think about. But the garden does end up having a fair amount of color, and I am thinking about how to blend them. And I realize that right now the garden has a lot of pink and purple. I don't know if I would have said that. I really do love purple, but like even my shirt, it's pink. I guess you can be cool and be pink. So having my pink moment right now. I do a fair amount of teaching, and when I'm talking to gardeners, I think there's just some tried and true things that help to make a garden feel more cohesive. And one of them is to use more than one of the same plant. So I think about 3s, 5s, 7s, and I tend to place things asymmetrically as opposed to symmetrically. So I think more than one of each kind of a plant. It doesn't mean that you have to have more than one of a focal point kind of a plant, but kind of the supporting role plants, I do like to have more than one. And then really, like if one plant does have some real recognizable color, is there another plant that you can pick that somehow feels related to it, so that you end up having that harmonious blend. Like when I look at the plants, to me, I feel like they're my friends. I want them to feel friendly with the plant that's next to them. It's important to me that they kind of look like they all belong together. Here's another example. Kind of this whole area here, I think, works together. And even though I said that garish yellow is something that I tend to stay away from, I will say that I do like having some white and yellow in the foliage. So as you look here, this is a metasequoia called Northlight, very light, bright foliage. Then this is, I think, called Paisley, the hosta. So again, that kind of coloring, that same coloring is picked up by this Daphne called Moonlight, which is the reverse of Carol Mackey. And then this is Osmanthus, or false holly. And so you kind of see the yellow moving through, then picked up with the yellow oregano on the ground plane and the Hackana grass over here. And then my friend, Frankie Boy, that is actually an arborvitae. You would never know it, but he is. So I think that's one of the ways that I've blended things, is just by this kind of subtle repeat of color. So plants being friends, there's some different ways to have that happen. So certainly, kind of having some repetition of color helps. Proximity helps. So a fair amount of what I end up doing in the garden is, like I said, adding that airspace. So when plants start to get a little bit too friendly, I want them to be close enough, but not interfering with each other. So I'm always making little snips and removals so that they still look like they're friends, but they're not competing with each other. So that is a big part of the maintenance of a garden, because a garden is never static. So if there's one thing that I would want people to take away from seeing the garden, visiting the garden, really is to have fun and to break the rules and put stuff in the garden. Just take a chance, take a risk, do something different. That's really, I want to give people permission to have fun in the garden, that it can be more than just about having the right plants in the right spot. It can really just be very playful, whimsical, and personal.